sinister in play. Joshua Jackson delivers a masterful performance that keep you on the edge of your seat. New to Oracle? Well, perfect timing. Dive into the supernatural thriller series today. No need to wait between episodes. Oracle.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Graham, the host of Wondery's American. In our latest series, we explore the explosive Scopes monthly trial of 1925 when a young tenant.
From Ballin Studios and Wondery, I'm Mr. Ballin, and this is Mr. Ballin's Medical Mysteries, where every week we will explore a new baffling mystery originating from the one place we all can't escape, our own bodies. So, if you like a story, please make the follow button a salad to take to work for lunch. But instead of using lettuce, use poison ivy leaves. Now, our first story, called Gut Check. On a sunny spring morning in 2021, 16-year-old Sabrina Blessing jolted awake inside of a Boston home with a twisting pain in her stomach. It felt as if her whole belly was being squeezed and wrung out like a wet towel. And pretty soon, the pain gave way to nausea. Sabrina jumped for the trash can near her bedside. She vomited just as another searing pain wrenched her insides. Sabrina had been dealing with these stomach pains for the last 2 weeks. They would come on sharp and sudden, and then vanish in a matter of minutes. The first time she felt it, she thought it might be food poisoning. But the pain kept coming back day after day, getting worse each time, and also lasting longer each time. This morning was the worst one yet. She had begun telling herself that, maybe she had the flu. But now, she wasn't so sure. When the vomiting finally subsided, Sabrina put the trash can back on the floor and flopped back onto her bed. She closed her eyes, feeling absolutely miserable. Her sinuses were full of snot and bile, and her forehead was damp with sweat, and she knew she looked as ragged as she felt. This was a disaster. Sabrina didn't know how she'd make it to school today, and she was terrified about what would happen if she didn't go. She'd just begun dating a new guy who was a star player on the football team. Every girl at school had a crush on him. And so Sabrina's mind raced with visions of him being surrounded by a bunch of cheerleaders, all trying to get his attention. The thought of that made her stomach clench all over again. But Sabrina fought through it and actually struggled, tightening up like a fist. A moment later, her mom knocked on the door and peeked inside. Sabrina sort of moaned, but told her mom she was okay. She said she was going to tough it out and go to school. Then she shakily got to her feet, but the second she stood up, she felt so lightheaded, she began to fall over. Her mom rushed inside and caught her daughter just in time. She told Sabrina that school would have to wait. This had gone on long enough. She was taking Sabrina to the emergency room. When Sabrina arrived at the ER, the doctor examined her, took some blood, and then asked for a urine sample so they could run some tests. And thankfully, it all came back normal. So Sabrina asked him if she could go to school now. But the doctor shook his head. No. He said he wanted to do an ultrasound of Sabrina's abdomen, just to be sure nothing was wrong with any of her internal organs. Sabrina sighed and laid back in her hospital bed. Then she began to twirl her hair around her finger while she waited for a technician to come into her cubby in the ER with an ultrasound machine. And as she laid there, all she could think about were all the things that could go wrong with her new relationship if she didn't get to school. What if another girl did catch her boyfriend's attention? And what if she was actually sick here? Would he still want to be with her? And then Sabrina started thinking, well, wait, what if she was really sick? She had tried hard to kind of deny it, the idea that something could really be wrong with her beyond just an ordinary stomach flu. But now as she sat here, she started thinking, how bad was this really? Could her life be in danger? Suddenly, Sabrina's heart was racing with anxiety. She twirled her hair around her finger faster and faster until it was in a big giant tangle around her hand. Her mind was going a mile a minute. But if there was any relief, it was that Sabrina did not have to wait very long for her ultrasound. Just a few minutes later, the tech came in, squeezed some cold gel in her stomach, and began the ultrasound. Sabrina was glad for the distraction as the tech moved the wand across her belly, the screen flickering with shifting shapes. A minute later, the tech called the doctor in, and he glanced at the ultrasound screen. He told Sabrina that everything looked normal, and relief immediately washed over her. The doctor said he didn't really know what was wrong, but if it was a virus, it should pass through her system.
This part looked like a
but in the meantime, he was going to prescribe her with a few medications to help manage the pain and discomfort. First, he was giving her prescription-strength ibuprofen, which was more potent than anything she could get over the counter. But because painkillers that strong can cause stomach irritation, he was also prescribing some medicine to protect her stomach lining and reduce the nausea. Sabrina thanked him and took some deep breaths to calm herself down. She told herself this would all be over in a few days and everything would be back to normal. However, the medicine didn't help. A few days later, Sabrina was curled up on the couch in her living room, hugging her stomach. The pain hadn't let up all day. Earlier that morning, she felt good enough to go to school, and halfway through her first class, a familiar twisting pain erupted in her stomach, and she had to run immediately to the nurse's office. Mom had left work to come take her home. Sabrina moaned and squeezed her eyes shut as her mother hurried into the living room with a glass of water and the extra-strength ibuprofen tablets. Sabrina reached for them and downed the pills, hoping the stabbing sensation would go away soon. But the throbbing kept spreading through her belly, and eventually she cried out for her mother again, who came rushing back into the living room to see what was the matter. Sabrina could barely choke out the words, but she told her mom it felt like the ibuprofen was actually making her stomach feel worse. Now she thought she was going to throw up again. Tears streamed down her face as she grabbed the trash can by the end table. Her mother told her to hang tight. She stood up and raced towards the kitchen and came back with the bottle of anti-nausea medication. She told Sabrina to take it. This would help
Stop
calm
us
her stomach after
en route, but it was
Mom
packed.
shook a pill
They
out of
left.
the bottle and handed it to Sabrina.
They stopped it to buy
Sabrina
something,
hesitated.
but it
The
was
last
too
pill
packed.
had only made things worse,
Really?
so she was
Yeah,
worried of taking
they
something
left.
else.
They probably
And Sabrina's stomach twisted horribly
Maybe that's
again.
what. Maybe the.
So she just looked up at her mom, gave her a thin smile, took the pill, and popped it.
Yeah.
What do they want? Just ice?
But once her mom had
No,
left
no,
the
the
room,
the
Sabrina
breakfast.
spit the pill back out. She didn't know why, but she was sure the medication wasn't helping. She told herself that she could just, tough
look
it
at
out
that.
and fight
Wow.
through this thing, and soon everything would be better.
Yeah, they so flat.
Imagine in the winter though.
1 week later,
Big
Sabrina
snowstorm,
gritted
you
her
can't leave
teeth
your house.
as she slowly walked across the
You
dark
don't see.
emergency
You don't see
parking lot.
cornfields,
Long after midnight.
something like
Every
that,
movement
no?
she made sent a new jolt of pain.
Como cuando vamos
Her condition
a
had not gotten
Pinery, ¿se acuerda?
Tonight,
Yeah,
when she was
that's
still in
far.
bed, she had suddenly woken up with horrible pain in her
Strawberries,
stomach.
corn.
The pain was very sharp and deep, like her whole stomach was seizing up. She'd asked her mom to take her back to the ER.
Mira,
Every step
solar
across the
panels.
parking lot felt like a stab in her side. By the time they reached the hospital doors, Sabrina was barely able to stand, much less walk. Quickly, a nurse put her in a wheelchair and took her back to a cubicle in the ER. Once they were there, Sabrina's mom helped her crawl onto the hospital bed. Then the nurse explained the doctor would be in soon, but for now, they would do another ultrasound. They would also test her for sexually transmitted diseases. Sabrina and her mother nodded. 30 minutes later, a different doctor than the one who treated her last time stepped into the cubicle. He told Sabrina that her STD test had come back negative. Then he asked if Sabrina's meds had made any difference in her pain levels over the past week. Sabrina shook her head and said no, explaining that the extra-strength ibuprofen hadn't helped. If anything, it actually had made her pain worse. And after that first time having that horrible adverse reaction to the ibuprofen, or so she thought, she had been too afraid to take any of the other medicines in fear that they too would cause more pain. So she had not been taking the anti-nausea pills or the meds for her stomach lining. Upon hearing this, the doctor looked sort of puzzled. He told Sabrina that it didn't seem like she was having an adverse reaction to the meds, and it really didn't seem like there was anything seriously wrong with her stomach. The only way to get past this was to go through it. Those pills were supposed to help her endure the discomfort. Sabrina smiled and said okay, but inside, she was fuming. It took everything she had not to scream and pull out her hair. As soon as she was discharged, she told her mother they needed to find another doctor, one who would actually help. One week later, pediatrician Dr. Kenny Huang introduced himself to his new patient, Sabrina. Sabrina's mom had brought her into his hospital in Boston after 2 trips to their local emergency room did not resolve Sabrina's stomach pain. Sabrina explained to him that her pain seemed to be getting worse and more frequent. Dr. Huang could see she was on the verge of tears as she spoke, so he promised her he would help them get to the bottom of this. Dr. Huang asked Sabrina to lie back on the table. He was going to press around her abdomen to see what was triggering her pain. Sabrina sighed. She said she'd been through this already, and none of the doctors had said anything was wrong with her. Dr. Huang gave her a reassuring pat on her shoulder. He knew how frustrating this was for her, but he needed to check for himself. Maybe he'd find something that the others hadn't. Sabrina nodded and then followed Dr. Huang's instructions. After she laid down, he began gently pressing his fingertips into her abdomen, searching for a tender spot. Sabrina stayed quiet during the exam, but the doctor noticed her wincing every time he pressed it to her stomach. It seemed like the whole area was sensitive. It did not seem like the pain was originating from one single spot. When he was done, he asked Sabrina to try to describe what she actually felt inside of her abdomen. Sabrina looked at him skeptically, like she didn't trust Dr. Huang was even going to believe her. Sensing this, Dr. Huang grabbed his clipboard and promised the teenager that he was listening and was even going to take notes. Sabrina explained how severe her pain was becoming. Each episode was an 8 out of 10 at this point in terms of pain. It would come on suddenly and was so intense she would vomit. Once she threw up, the twisting feeling usually subsided a little. In total, the spasms usually lasted about 15 minutes, but sometimes they were longer. Those longer episodes were absolute agony. Dr. Huang listened intently as Sabrina explained why she refused to take any more of her medication. He nodded, trying to show Sabrina he wanted to take her pills. Then, when Sabrina stopped talking for a second, he asked her if she'd been experiencing any other changes since all of this started. Sabrina nodded. She said she wasn't very hungry anymore, felt tired and dizzy a lot of the time. She hesitated for a moment, looking sort of embarrassed, then confessed that she'd also been experiencing constipation and hadn't had a bowel movement for 3 days. It was making her stomach feel even